Hello humans, Master DinnerFlax here, and today I'll be going into an in-depth analysis of a deck I'm getting ready to build in real life, and I'm going to explain a lot of card choices, and I'm going to explain why I take a different approach to this deck, because Tellarknights as a deck itself is not very good, and some of that potential is actually lost just because people want to have this really bad playstyle with it that doesn't work in real Yu-Gi-Oh! It just works at locals sometimes. So I'm going to get into it and I'm going to explain a lot of theories. Triple Deneb. If you're under the impression that Deneb set 5 is your best play, then you're wrong. It's not the worst play, especially if you have Alpha and Strike to back it up. But Deneb is just a searcher, and it's not even that good of a searcher. It's a Stratos, of course, but most of the cards in your deck are just filler. Most of the cards in your deck don't actually do very much. So it's not that good of a searcher. But the way I've built this deck is you can cycle through Altiers and summons without seeing Deneb for quite a few turns, just because of how I built this deck. And I'm going to explain why later. But yeah, you run Triple Deneb because it's the best way to resource your deck and get you the materials you need. This is the best card in your deck. Altier is the best card in your deck because it summons extra deck monsters out of your graveyard. So this is important because it revives Deltaros, Trivair, and Dark Tellarknight, which I'll explain why that's important later, but don't forget, you can't attack when you use that for the rest of the turn, because people love to forget that. Only Tellarknights can attack for the rest of the turn. Triple Unicolai, just because you need to resource your deck. I have 7 revival spells and traps, including 2 Sky Bridges. So that's 9 cards in a 39-card deck with triple desires that you can draw into to combo with Unicolai, and because of that, I'll just run triple of it, because there's plenty of cards that work well with it. So that's my theory. It's also an 1800 body, so it's one of the best ways to push for damage late game. And the final fact is, this card doesn't send Tellarknight monsters. It sends Tellarknight cards. And I'm going to explain why that's important soon. And then one choice that people always make that I just don't understand is people only want to play double Vega, but so I understand if you don't have another Tellarknight in hand, it's worthless, but it actually just doesn't matter. So your most important goal is to XZ summon in an XZ deck, and Vega is one of the cards that allows you to do that. Vega Deneb is better than just Deneb, and even if you just draw Vegas, well, that kind of sucks, but the thing is, there's nothing you can really do about that anyways, and you need as many names as possible. You need to get your resources on field. You can't leave your shit in hand. You need everything just cycling and going through, otherwise you're just going to lose, and it doesn't matter if you play double Vega to reduce bricking. The problem is Vega's just too good. Vega's just too good at what it does, and your deck needs all the summon power it can possibly have. So I'm playing Triple Vega just to XZ summon quicker, because XZ summoning is your ultimate goal. You need to do that before you do anything else. Don't worry about all your trap cardamized garbage, because it is garbage. Vega at triple is questionable, but I found it to be the best because the only thing your deck should be trying to doing is win. It shouldn't try to stall, which is the ultimate problem I have with Tellarknight builds ever since like 2015. They're not built to win, they're built to make the opponent not do anything. But Tellarknights themselves don't do anything when you build them like that. They're too weak, they're too slow. You need to you can have all the stun in the world, but if you can't capitalize on a single locked turn on your opponent, then it doesn't matter how many trap cards you play, because you can't kill them. And that's why I'm running Triple Vega. And for the last 2 monsters is Sirius. This one I think kind of is just, it has to be this, because since the ban of Emerald you have no way to resource your cards back that you need, and Sirius is one of the cards that can actually do that. It's got a 1600 body, so it's a little bigger than normal. And you can always just get it whenever. I know one is kind of risky with Desires, but if you're activating Desires, you're drawing 2 new cards, and that should help you win in the first place. So if you do banish it, then it doesn't matter anyways, because the cards you drew off Desires are probably going to be more powerful than cards waiting the next 2 to 3 turns in comparison to the cards you have now. So that's fine. And the same goes with this one. This one's interesting because, similar to Unicolite, it doesn't resource Tellarknight monsters, it resources Tellarknight cards. And again, I'm going to explain that soon, but like, this is one of the most questionable cards in here, and I really like it a lot, but it's also like really weak to just draw. But it's been really powerful, and I'm going to explain very soon why. So this is a lot of names, and this is a lot more monsters than a normal Tellarknight build. And the reason that is because I want to fucking win. I'm not going to stall and lose because I don't have any way to do damage. Tellarknights are really bad about doing damage. They can't use... They're one of the worst card demise decks I've ever seen because all their cards say add to hand and special summon. So card demise just makes the deck worse regardless of how much you draw. And like, what people don't understand is traps don't win games. They never have. Traps have never won games. So you need to have actual push for when your traps work. And you need to have plays for when your traps don't work. Tellarknights as a deck need quite a bit of traps. But there's no amount of traps you could possibly play to make a deck that doesn't want to win good. So I'm playing a lot of Tellarknights just to XZ summon, just to push for damage, and to capitalize on many stuns as possible on my opponent. Now, for the spell cards, triple Scapegoat. Scapegoat is broken. I don't know why any slow deck wouldn't play this. This is so one of the things. Not only can you do the Ningirsu combo, which is really cool because it gives you 3 extra monster zones, but it also makes Saryuja with a Tellarknight in hand. And what's really cool about that is Saryuja also summons from your hand. So you're cycling 4 draws to fix your hand, if you even had one at that point. And then when you fixed your hand and summon a Tellarknight from your hand, it's really hard to lose. It's very hard to lose in a situation like that. So I really love Scapegoat in here. The only card I'm not a fan of in my extra deck, I'll explain soon. Triple Desires. So in theory, I'm running a lot of spell cards, but in all actuality, all these spell cards do are just like Triple Desires. The only thing that does is just draw cards, so that gets me to traps. So I can quit playing the like weak and garbage brick traps and just play the best ones, so I don't have to worry about like drawing into crap I don't need or want. So that's important. And the same goes with Upstart. Like, I'm cutting the traps I don't really like just so I can see the traps I do like quicker. And yes, in theory, with all these monsters, it'll kind of make an awkward hand, quote awkward hand. But if you're playing Triple Vega, it doesn't. You can draw like 3 Tellarknights, and that's fine because then you get to XZ summon, and that's how your deck wins. And then we got double Skybridge and double Genesis. Now, I'm not a huge fan of 2-ofs like this normally. However, like I said earlier with Unicolite and Betelgeuse, you can actually just send these with Unicolite and then grab them back with Betelgeuse. And like, if you draw Genesis and then next turn draw Betelgeuse, or just get to Betelgeuse another way, you can just grab back the Genesis, do it again, revive Betelgeuse, do it again and again and again. And it's like, it's similar with Skybridge, except Skybridge is something you rather draw early game rather than Genesis where you get late game. So that's about it, like explaining these cards. And then finally, like, all the spell cards are just empty. Like, Rhoda isn't, it's a monster, so 15 monsters. Upstart's a card that's not the one you have. And then Soul Charge and Reborn, only because they're not so I was thinking about it for a while. So being able to trap revive on your opponent's turn with like Call the Haunted, Back to the Front is most of the time better. However, a problem I noticed is that it's really easy for your opponent to deal with the back row and like force you to activate it, while Soul Charge and Reborn you can just use on your first turn, so Unokalai is life easier. And then not only that, but you can hold them. And holding resources for when you need them, I find is so much better than devoting them to the field. But it's one of the things where these two could be extra revival traps, and I won't judge you for it, just because it's so hard to know which ones are better. It really is, because after all the testing, they're interchangeable with themselves, but you don't want to play too many revivals because it's not a heavy monster deck. Well, mine's kind of heavy for a Tellarknight deck. Traps, triple alpha. This is like the most justification of why you just want to run a lot of monsters, because this is a trap that needs monsters to work. And if, like, you can't do that, then why are you playing this card? If you're playing 8 monsters, then this card is actually worthless. So, yeah. Triple Alpha, very, very good. It's even better when you're actually XZ summoning. So, yeah, just very good. Triple Strike is the only other real trap I want to play outside of Warning. Because all the other ones, like Bottomless, Mirror Forces, even Paleos, they're so bad. They don't do anything, and they don't help your deck. They just stall. And so one of the problems with, like, just people when they don't know how to deck build is stalling. So they notice they live longer when they stall, but the problem is you're never winning when you're stalling. You actually have to try to kill your opponent and out-resources them when you're stalling, because otherwise you're just stalling, and they'll eventually have a hand to where you could have all the trap cards set and it won't matter. Just because stalling doesn't work. It doesn't work in Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless you got some kind of alternate win condition like Exodia, but even then, that doesn't actually work. Then finally, for the revival traps, triple call because you can recycle it with Trevair, and double back to the front because Oasis of the Dragon Souls is also really good and slightly better in theory. But one of the cards I'm playing is Isolde, and turning it into a worm is very awkward. So I just decided to play back to the front. It's also a card that's chainable and doesn't lose to, like, Cyclone or Twin Twisters. So yeah, I think this one's, because of Isolde, it's slightly better than Oasis of the Dragon Souls. For the extra deck. Now the extra deck I'm still working on, because there's 2 cards I really want back in here, Tornado Dragon and Trevair. But as of right now, I'm going with 2 Dark Tellarknight, 1 Trevair, 1 Deltaros. Now, let me explain Deltaros. Deltaros is actually broken. So, while it's on the field and it has XE materials, your opponent cannot respond to summons. They can strike his summon or warning it. However, if you can't do it to the rest, and you also can't, like, Torrential or Bottomless him, and it's like, they can't respond to his summon, so they don't have priority on anything, so I can just activate his effect. It's kind of like giving old school priority to him. It's really good. But no, that's not the broken part. Regardless of how many times per turn, regardless of how he was summoned, if he is sent from the field to the graveyard, special summon a Tellarknight from your deck, or hand, technically. So, what does this mean? It means no matter how he leaves, no matter how he's brought back and leaves, he summons a Tellarknight from your deck. So, what you do, let's say your first turn is just make Deltaros, which sometimes that's not advised, because if you're going neg, then don't do it. But you summon Deltaros, they make a play, you alpha it. Alright, so you draw a card, Deltaros triggers, summoning Altair from deck, summoning Deltaros back from grave, and then on your next turn, you link those 2 away for Isolde. Deltaros triggers again, Isolde triggers, so Isolde searches you whatever you need for later, like usually it's Betelgeuse or Sirius. But then you turn that into, and then Deltaros triggers again, summoning Altair from deck, triggering Altair, summoning Deltaros back. Then you turn those 3 into Borreload. Deltaros triggers again, and you summon Deneb and get another Tellarknight search. If you haven't realized this by now, then you haven't realized this is insane. You are resourcing your deck, you're link summoning for free. It's absurd. The Deltaros is absurd. The only reason Trevere was liked so much is because he has a much better on-field on-summon effect. But the thing about Deltaros is he's a superior. He is one of the greatest floaters I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like Dante Seer, but a little bit stronger just because of the stats and just because it summons from deck. It summons from deck rather than add from graveyard to hand. This card is ridiculous. So, Deltaros, like, what I really want to do is I want to play 2 Delt, 2 Trevere, and then 2 to 3 Dark, but with Scapegoat it's kind of difficult, but I'll still work. Bujin, Keys, Tsukiyomi, it helps fix your bad hands with, like, too many Vegas and a dead body, but when you do that, you can just draw extra cards, and that'll help you out. And then Baguska, because, so, that Borreload combo I told you earlier, it's really cool, but you can't attack with Borreload because you used Altair. So what I actually do is I turn Isolde and the Deltaros into a Decode, and then that summons Deneb from deck, getting me another search. But then I turn those 2 into Baguska, and that really locks my opponent out for a while, so that's really good. Those are the only Xyz. For the links that aren't associated with Scapegoat, I got Isolde and Decode. Isolde should go in every warrior deck. I don't know how it couldn't. And then 1 Decode, like I explained earlier. For Scapegoat, we've got 1 Link Karibo, 1 Link Spider, 1 Mrs. Radiant, 1 Ib, and in Gear Suit. This is probably the most cuttable stuff, but I don't know yet. I really like having this option, but it could also be something else. Because, like, if you Scapegoat and start making plays, you can't Trevere that turn. So, like, if you need to Trevere, but you've also Scapegoat, then you kind of want to do this instead. So, yeah. Borreload, I explained earlier, this is probably the worst card in the extra deck, and it's probably going to get replaced soon, just because Altair is how you usually make it, and Altair usually makes this not as good, but it's still pretty cool. And then Saryuja, I explained earlier, it's what makes Scapegoat so good. So, yeah, that's about it. This isn't a real side deck, this is just stuff I wanted to talk about. So, yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. The reason... So, hopefully you kind of got it ingrained in your head at this point that I don't like building stun just for the sake of making my opponent suffer. So, if I'm going to build a slow, stunny deck, I still want to win. I still actually want to play the game and beat you. And all this card demise, pot of duality garbage doesn't allow me to do that. It doesn't allow me to win the game. I'm trying to win the game. I'm trying to kill you as fast as possible so you don't even get the opportunity to win. And that's how a deck should be built. I'm not going to put in stuff that doesn't fix issues. I'm not going to make my deck... If I see issues in the deck, I'm not just going to fill it up with traps and call it a day, and I, quote, fixed it, because you didn't actually fix it. You just put a Band-Aid over it. So I'd actually rather fix the deck than put Band-Aids over it. And traps are Band-Aids for a bad deck. Instead of fixing the deck to where it has at least somewhat of a playable chance, you just put traps in and hope that does it. And in a format with True Dracos, that's never going to happen. So, yep. Sorry for this long video, and even if it was a little spiteful, but, like, I'm building Tellarknights like this quite literally just because I want to win. I don't want to set 5 and pass and hope my opponent doesn't play a single answer to traps, because so one of the number one issue I have with heavy trap Tellarknights is They play so little monsters, but so many revival traps, that you actually just brick all the fucking time. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play bricks. I'm not going to play bricks. I'm just going to play the deck. And if the deck underperforms, I'm going to fix it rather than just put traps in and hope that fixes it for me, which it won't. If you've actually played, it doesn't fix it. So, yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this very long video and very spiteful video. Sorry about that, but I just had to explain this very passionately why you have to actually fix issues with the deck rather than just turn it into stall. So, yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master DinnerFlax will take your soul.